we do have an incredibly urgent situation as we've all lived through this summer. We need to address the climate crisis. And the president and worked with members of Congress who supported the Inflation Reduction Act to do it in a way that's achievable, that will accommodate the company's interests. And through the strike, I think we'll make sure that it accommodates the workers' interests too.
Professor, the EV issue isn't the only thing at play here in these issues, in these negotiations between the union and automakers. There's a number of things that they have raised, including just job security more generally, as you see the evolution of technology, not just in terms of if it's powered by an internal combustion engine or a battery, but just technology evolving to the extent that workers who had jobs in the past may not be looking at those same jobs in the future. How do you guarantee security in existing jobs instead of focusing on retraining workers for new ones, for example? How should we be thinking about that balance?
Yeah, I think balance is the right word. That is how you can tackle the future. You need a balance between helping workers who want to stay in the industry, who want to learn new skill sets to continue to be evolving members of these companies and supporting them as they go forward. But there are also workers who've invested a tremendous amount of their lives in these companies. And so you need to balance that also with some basic level of security to sort of recognize that investment that workers have made in these companies. This is an industry, I think the collective bargaining relationships between the UAW and the auto companies go back like 100 years. Think about all the technological changes that this industry has gone through over those 100 years. And they figured out how to make it work through a very mature collective bargaining relationship. So I think we're going to see them figure it out this time too.
You wear a couple of different hats in this conversation, Sharon Block. One of them, as I mentioned, is a former member of the National Labor Relations Board. I wonder what you think of the distance on some of the other issues, particularly retirement. When the union is coming back around, we're trying to advance. We're talking about advancing into the future of electric vehicles, but they want to go back to an 80s style pension plan. And that appears to be a deal breaker for the big three. Is that a bridge too far? If you're trying to get people to the table and make a deal, would you tell them to pull back on that request?
Well, I would certainly never tell them what to put on the table or take off the table. These are very complicated collective bargaining relationships with a lot of moving pieces. And so it's really hard to isolate one particular proposal from all the others to figure out how it's going to play out. The union's going to have to figure out what's most important to it. The companies are going to have to figure out what's most important to them. No party comes to a collective bargaining situation expecting to get everything that they ask for. So I think you're going to see some give and take. You're going to see some proposals fall off the table or, be modified. But again, these are parties that know each other really well. They've got a long history. They have made historic decisions together in the past. And so I have confidence in their ability to negotiate through this, historic time. But again, if you think about a 100-year collective bargaining relationship, they've got a good track record.
Well, and this isn't the only example of collective bargaining in action that we are viewing in real time at the moment. We, of course, all awoke to the news yesterday or Sunday evening that the Writers Guild had finally reached an agreement with studios, at least a tentative one. At the heart of that issue was another technological advancement. It was about AI. How should we be thinking about AI and the American worker, Sharon?
I think it's a fascinating issue, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more detail about how the WGA and the studios tackled that issue and got to an agreement. I think there are a lot of workers out there who, especially over the past few months, over the summer, or as we're seeing sort of all of these AI products accelerating and really evolving at a very rapid pace. I think a lot of people are sitting out there thinking, how are their jobs going to be impacted by AI? I think including workers who probably never really thought about themselves as vulnerable before. And so I think there's going to be a lot of interest and attention to how this issue was resolved within this collective bargaining relationship. But I think it's also really going to signal to a broader swath of the public that collective bargaining is a really important way of having a say in your own future. And I'll be really interested to see if there's an expansion, an increase in interest in collective bargaining, because we're seeing in all these different sectors ways that in the collective bargaining relationship, they're resolving really knotty problems about the future and technology.